Welcome, everybody. My name is Kitty Boone. I work for the Aspen Institute, and I just want to welcome you to what is called an evening called Inspired to Action, but I promise you it's inspired by a couple who have done so much in the last, we're in our 5th Ideas Festival, to bring such remarkably talented young people to Aspen. The Bezos Family Foundation has created a scholarship for 12 high school juniors who are picked from states across the union, no two from the same most of the time, who apply for a special scholarship to come to the Ideas Festival, at which time they are allowed to and encouraged to participate in everything we do and then have special sessions with speakers. So this week, this remarkable group of young people have met with Tom Friedman, Sandra Day O'Connor, the list goes on. And they also go to everything, and they ask probably the best questions in the group. And this is done out of a complete investment of time, energy, and enthusiasm for the youth in our country, especially those who may never get an opportunity like this, certainly at this point in their life. So I would like to thank Jackie and Mike Bezos for making it possible for 12 high school juniors and their principals and teachers to be here in Aspen for a week, enjoy this, and get inspired by the leadership that they are surrounded by at the Aspen Institute. So thank you, Jackie. It's my pleasure to introduce you to the evening's event, and I'm going to turn this over to, where are you, Terry, who is from an organization called Global Nomads, and I promise you, you're going to have a very inspiring evening with these remarkable young people. Thank you so much for coming.
Thanks, Kitty. I'm Terry Culver, Executive Director of Global Nomads Group, and I too would like to welcome you all here to tonight's event, Inspired to Action, sponsored by the Bezos Scholars Program at the Aspen Institute. Many of you have attended the Ideas Festival to listen to and share ideas, big and small, humble and outrageous, hopefully, in the hopes that maybe they'll shift your thinking or inspire some kind of action. Global Nomads Group was established out of exactly that kind of inspiration by 4 friends sitting around a college dorm room 11 years ago. Since that time, we've worked in 40 countries. More than 1 million teachers and students have participated in our programs. The organization was established to really help young people connect, to help them create dialogue where they could learn about each other, learn about the world they live in, learn about themselves. And along the way, we've come across some extraordinary individuals. And tonight, you'll meet 5 people who I think are among the most extraordinary individuals. Before we get to that, I'd like to show you a very quick video about our work.
A group called Global Nomads set up a link between American teenagers and Iraqi teenagers.
What they basically do is they take young people from different parts of the world who wouldn't know each other otherwise, and they believe that through familiarity you can breed a bond so that hopefully in the future we don't have the same types of problems we're having right now.
The organization recently sent a team to Rwanda to set up satellite communications so students there can chat with students in the United States.
20 schools across the country talked via video phone to Sudanese refugees and aid workers. They were able to learn about the hardships of running a refugee camp.
A science teacher from Harlem, today offering her middle school students an extreme field trip, an up-close lesson about the Earth's climate. The students here in New York, their teacher, though, was 9,000 miles away in Antarctica.
The teleconference was arranged by the Global Nomads Group.
Founded in 1998, GNG uses interactive video conferencing to bring young people from around the world together to meet face-to-face, across cultural and international boundaries, to discuss their differences and similarities, and the issues of our time.
I don't like riding camels. I don't have a pound in my pocket right now. And you don't look like cowboys. who like to fire.
Today we're going to do our best to understand each other and our different beliefs.
I'm an Arab and my family are Arabs and we're not Arabs.
An eye for an eye is not a solution for such things.
I just think that you guys are really strong for going through an entire war.
In this church only there are 10,000 of people who are killed in here.
I don't believe that a lot of people in the United States can possibly fathom 800,000 people dying within a matter of days.
As the young generation, thanks to.
By shrinking our global village, students realize that no matter what you look like, what language you speak, or where you live, we all want the same thing: happiness, prosperity, and peace.
We could start to preach love and stop hating each other for just stupid things.
I think that it would benefit the world, like if you guys could share your stories with maybe other countries.
I'm a pediatrician and I know how difficult it is to get health care information to teenagers. There's no more powerful group to tell teenagers about their health than other teenagers.
My mother's best friend died of AIDS.
One of my friends in Australia, she has HIV.
One of my cousins is the HIV positive.
The essential difference is that in USA, HIV positive patient would get empathy and sympathy, whereas in India, an HIV patient would just get pity and nothing else. It's like people think that you've done something wrong to actually have HIV.
I think when you do have teenagers talking to other teenagers, then you really are able to discuss issues on a very deep level.
Do people have sex before marriage?
No, not many people here have sex before marriage.
Even the students we talk to are like cream of the crop academically. They know a lot of stuff about medicine, but they didn't know much about the transmission of AIDS.
I didn't know that it could pass through oral, and I didn't know you could get AIDS through the tears and the sweat. That was news to me.
This is great, what you're doing, and this kind of interconnectedness and everything. Even when I'm exploring a character, when I'm exploring a story, a thing, I'm looking for the connection it has to me to be able to hopefully do things that have resonance to other people. Thanks for allowing me to be involved.
It's been an eye-opening experience for the students, because one of them was saying, you know, my most important one is an iPod, and they don't have water.
I would just like to say that every single person that participated in the conference, and we were lucky enough to participate twice, we just had an absolutely amazing experience. People told me it was life-changing.
But when I got into it, the very first conference just let me know, like, wow. I went home and I bragged to my mom so much, like, Mom, I really see how bad people got it. She always used to tell me it's people who will kill to be in my shoes. But I never really believed it. I just played it off. But now I see it's the truth.
We hope that you see the sunset from our point of view, because as you saw, it's quite beautiful. So it's nice to be with you guys, and we hope we can see you again and talk to you again. And we hope that we will live in cooperation and in peace, because that's all our dreams, actually. Thank you very much.
It is my great honor and pleasure to introduce Anna Deavere Smith, noted actor, author, playwright, an all-around cultural force. She will be moderating tonight's panel and introducing the panelists to you. I can't think of a better person to play this role for us.
Thank you. I'm sorry. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you for coming. Thank you. Well, it's my pleasure to welcome you to this Global Nomads Group program sponsored by the Bezos Scholars Program. I had a chance last year to meet the remarkable young people who make up Global Nomads, and in fact, as a result of that, one of them ended up being in one of my plays. And I ended up performing one of them in one of my plays and actually closing the first act with that particular young lady. And so that's a big deal, close the first act. So I'm thrilled to be back, and I don't know if any of you will be willing to give me an interview and end up in one of my plays. We never know. What inspires a big idea? Necessity, extraordinary circumstances, passion. What makes one person find hope, courage, and an unwavering determination in circumstances that cause so many to despair? How does one young person become motivated to spark life-enhancing change in a village, a country, the world? Inspired to Action will offer a personal introduction to these 5 remarkable individuals who've become leaders in their generation as they battle the #1 genetic killer of children, help improve the lives of children in Peru, harness the wind in Africa and bring life, changing opportunities to the women of Afghanistan. Tonight we will celebrate the innovation, purpose, and great courage of these young panelists. They've taken ideas, inspirations, and passions and transformed them into action. They will show us that even the smallest idea or tool, a library book, when backed by action, can have a profound impact on a village, a country, the world. Although their journeys and challenges are markedly different, they share many traits: determination, resilience, a joyful spirit, and a great urgency to mobilize others to take action that brings about change. So our panelists this evening are Logan Smalley of Athens, Georgia, when he's not on the road. May I have an applause for him? Anna Dotson, originally from Peru, now a daughter of Colorado. William Kamkwamba of Wimbe, Malawi. And Palwasha Zarifi of Kabul City, Afghanistan. Darius Weems, who was a collaborator with Logan Smalley, is in Georgia and couldn't be with us tonight, but he'll be here in video clips and in spirit. So after hearing their stories, I know you'll agree that these extraordinary individuals, you'll agree that these are extraordinarily interesting individuals who have been indeed inspired to action. Fatal disease. These two words are not always coupled with words like talented, funny, charming, determined, generous, and resilient. But Darius Weems has taken on the degenerative Duchenne muscular dystrophy, the #1 genetic killer of children, with all of those traits. It began as a 7,000-mile adventure for Darius and Logan Smalley and a documentary crew of 12 as they drove to Los Angeles from Georgia in the hope that MTV would pimp his ride being his wheelchair. But on the way to LA, the ride took another turn as Darius and his companions became disabilities rights activists with the hope of raising world awareness of DMD and funding for its research. To date, their documentary has raised $2 million for a cure in our lifetime. For every $20 DVD purchase, $17 goes to DMD research. And it's being sold in the bookstore, so you have no excuse. Ladies and gentlemen, via film, meet Darius Weems of Athens, Georgia, and in person, Logan Smalley.
Like many boys his age, Darius Weems likes basketball. But Darius is a bit different from other kids. Darius has Duchenne muscular dystrophy, a disorder that destroys all voluntary muscles in the body, as well as the heart. Most children with the disorder die by the age of 25.
I'm in a wheelchair, but I'm just like a regular person. Never think I'm like somebody else. I'm just the same as other people. I got talents. The last thing in the world, we need somebody to feel petty for.
Darius's older brother, Mario, had the same disorder. He died in 2000. He was only 19. Throughout their childhood, Darius and Mario attended a summer camp for children with special needs in Athens, Georgia. That's where they met camp counselor Logan Smalley. Over the years, Logan grew close to the Weems brothers.
Before he died, he asked Logan to watch over me if anything ever happened to him.
He knew that Darius was old enough to remember how he coped with the disease, and he went out of his way to show Darius how happy he still was no matter how hard it got. And I think he just wanted me to be Darius's friend when things got harder.
My brother, he opened up the door for me. He showed me you can't sit in one mold in life. Gotta try to make some moves.
One day we were sitting around watching Pimp My Ride, the MTV show, and it just hit us. We should try and get your wheelchair pimped on Pimp My Ride.
The popular MTV program took rundown cars and trucks and customized them into dazzling new vehicles. The show was based in California, so Darius and Logan decided it was time for a road trip.
That's right, MTV. I want to get my wheelchair customized on your show.
Logan organized 12 friends to raise money to make a movie of their journey out west. Collecting from piggy banks, holding barbecues, and promising on-screen credits for a $10 donation, they raised over $70,000. While Pimpin' Darius's Ride might have been the initial goal of this adventure, it turned into a journey Darius and Logan will never forget.
Officially proclaimed July 22nd as Darius Goes West Day.
The journey took the friends from Georgia to Florida, to the Grand Canyon, to Las Vegas and California. MTV didn't customize Darius's wheelchair, but they rolled in a little surprise.
What do you think about this one right here, Darius?
You have full stereo system. You have a 13.5-inch monitor, PlayStation 2, speakers.
On their return home, they were welcomed as hometown heroes. The trip was over, but the boys were changed forever.
We proved to the whole world that a kid in a wheelchair can travel all the way from Athens to California. Like, we made it.
The film Darius Goes West has been a critically acclaimed success. All proceeds going to Charlie's Fund, an organization devoted to finding a cure for muscular dystrophy. As for Logan and Darius, they continue to spread awareness about muscular dystrophy while never forgetting the amazing journey they took, a journey which will last a lifetime.
Why isn't Darius with us tonight?
Yeah, so we've been on the road for an entire year since September. The film that we actually made was in it did the film festival circuit in 2007, but then the whole original crew kind of tied off what they were doing, and we've been devoted on the road for an entire year. Darius traveled 50,000 miles since September, really pushing it, and it's a really significant year because he's 19, which if you caught at the beginning of the film is the same age his brother was when he died. So Darius celebrated this year of life, and really good video, got me a little worked up, and of course talking about this gets me worked up too. But on our way home from Darius's 5th or 6th time going west as we circle the country, he had a cough and we took him to the emergency room, and he was diagnosed with congestive heart failure. That said, my emotions are actually not so called for. He's doing extremely well. We caught it very early. He's taking medicine. He's, as he would put it, chilling at home right now, and he wishes that he could be here. And unfortunately, the worst side effect of congestive heart failure is the doctor said he can't travel so much. So he still begs to come, and he still does go to sneak out to certain places, but Colorado is a little far.
You were good friends with his brother Mario, and he asked you to take care of Darius. What do you think Mario would say if he were here tonight?
Gosh. Mario, they had an interesting relationship. Darius is definitely the, the kind of troublemaker of the two, and Mario's the wise one. But I know for a fact that Mario would make a wisecrack. If he saw everything that was going on with Darius's life, he would be blown away. He would be so proud, and he would also be like, "How did you pull this off?" Because he's done so much, and he would also, to stress how proud he would be. Mario was in the same situation that Darius was. He had never left Athens either, so he would be so excited that that he's seen everywhere that listed in the film and the short film, and then and dozens of other places.
What I love so much about the film is his sense of humor, Darius' sense of humor, and also to think about when y'all put him in the ocean and also on a hot air balloon, what it must have been like for him to lose his weight, do you know?
Absolutely. In both circumstances, he lost his weight, and I don't know, were you finished with the question?
Yeah.
I kind of interrupted you.
No, I mean, just to be suddenly weightless, right?
Yeah, and so he's a buoyant young man, and weightless is one way to put it. You know, once we got to Florida, that was Darius's first time ever seeing the ocean. Most of everyone in this room probably saw the ocean before they were 5. Or at least before they were 10. Darius was 15, so it was amazing to witness him seeing the ocean and you know, remembering every second and soaking it in. But very quickly, that kind of like nostalgic, wow, the ocean goes on forever, you know, that feeling gave way to him almost drowning in the surf, like repeatedly. The waves were pounding him, and he was, you know, he can't move his body, and we really kind of, you can see in the film, if you see the full film, we kind of get this fear on our face for a second, and then we finally prop him up, and he just burst out laughing, like the hardest laugh you've ever seen. And then, of course, if he gets past the surf, he is weightless. And he was actually able to walk in the water, which was extremely cool. And we had an underwater camera, or underwater housing for a camera, so we were able to catch that. And then the hot air balloon, which you brought up, was really cool because I actually got to ride in it with him, and as well as a cameraman. And while I was up there, I was thinking about how I'd been to basketball games at home and, you know, restaurants and just really local stuff. And then suddenly, you know, we're X thousand feet above California, and he's flying. And also he says this really cool thing. He says, you see all those patches? It looks like just like it does on TV. I just thought that was so cool. That's what he references it to.
But this wasn't just a cross-country trek. At a certain point, your goal got bigger. So when did you move from this being in the tradition of many American road trips? I think about Jack Kerouac on the road. When did it move from that to being about disability rights? When did you and Darius become disability rights activists?
Honestly, the first stop, because the first stop, and this is even before the ocean, we were rolling through Alabama, and remember, this is Darius's first road trip. He's never left Athens, Georgia, where we're from, and it was our pit stop. We needed gasoline. And so this is like, you know, this rite of passage that, you know, Kerouac and everybody else writes about. You get your pit stop. I guess you get your Slim Jims or your Skittles or your Coke or whatever. And so we're, you know, headed into the gas station, and boom, the entire curb is not wheelchair accessible. It's 6 inches that keeps Darius from experiencing, you know, something that every road tripper looks forward to. So right then and there, we realized, wow, what if the next place we stop is like this? What if this whole trip that we spent months fundraising and planning for, what if he can't even get into MTV's office? It is a very realistic idea. And so ever since then, you know, we've made it a real point. And actually, instead of talking more globally, let me contrast it with something else from the movie. Our third or fourth stop was Carlsbad Caverns. This is a, you know, millions of years old cave. I don't even know how old it is. And Carlsbad Caverns was so accessible that Darius got lost inside of it. We had no clue where he was. You know, like, Darius. He's like, oh, here. we had to just search for him in these caves. And so here's this gas station that was built in the 1980s probably, and then here's the Carlsbad Caverns, millions of years of stone, and it's accessible. So we really realized that we have the power to make the difference and make buildings accessible. So we reward places that are accessible, and all 12 of us don't give business to places that aren't accessible. And we also point out that it makes sense for places to be accessible. The poor mother with the stroller who goes to that gas station on a pit stop, the poor worker who totes 12 packs of beer or Coca-Cola or whatever, has to pull it over that lip. There's no reason for that curb cut. And I think that Darius brings that argument to the masses.
How'd you pay for all this? I mean, you had you were transporting 12 crew members. You had to feed them. You had to give them someplace to sleep. At one point, I think Darius gets a massage. Well, I guess that was paid for by, at the Beverly Hills Hilton. Not the Beverly Hills Hotel, the Beverly Hills Hilton, but
Right.
still Beverly Hills. How'd you pay
You
for
should
this?
see what didn't make the film. Anna.
Y'all went to Vegas,
Yeah.
New Orleans.
Well, speaking of budgeting, had Darius max bet, they let him gamble at the boutique slot machine, and had he max bet, he would have doubled the budget for the entire film. It was made for $70,000, which in film terms is next to nothing. And but the way we fundraised was, as you saw, the pre-selling of movie credits, barbecues. We put out piggy banks in all the local restaurants. And it was really difficult because none of us were filmmakers. My background's in education. Almost the entire crew's background is in education. And so that's why we had to sell our credits for $10. Everybody sells movie credits. It's just the executive producer usually goes for like $500,000, $1 million. But since we weren't filmmakers, we had to drop it down to 10. And to finish the story, Variety magazine, which is a trade magazine that you're probably all familiar with, quotes us as having the longest credit roll in documentary history.
Why has the film gotten such a great response in terms of critical acclaim and the money that you've been able to raise?
Well, I think that, to answer the second part first, the money raised is we actually just merged our goals. We made the film our fundraiser. As you said, $20 a DVD, 17 goes to Duchenne, and then the other 3 go to making more DVDs, and keeping us on the road so that we continue to promote. So we basically the critical part. I think the success of it is Darius. I wish he were here. He would charm everyone in the room. He is such a force and a lovable person, and he's hilarious. You guys did a great job capturing his personality, but you saw the full film. He's one of the funniest people I've ever met in my life, and he does it to crowd after crowd. And then I think the critics probably enjoy that part, as well as it being about the whole crew kind of falling backwards into this grassroots movement. And doing it for the right reasons and from the heart. And as far as continuing success, people actually resist. We found that people actually resist seeing the movie. They think that Duchenne muscular dystrophy has nothing to do with them. They think that wheelchair accessibility has nothing to do with them. But if we can just get them into the room and make them watch the hour and 20-minute film, suddenly they join our crew. We have a 20,000 plus person crew now, because they advocate so hard as they leave. So that's why we're completely independent, and I think we continue to grow because everyone who sees the film takes it upon themselves to convince the person that they see next to watch it.
So MTV didn't pimp his ride, but there's been a new development?
Yeah, and actually in the video, it was MTV outright denied the pimping of the ride. They didn't surprise him with that wheelchair at the end. Actually, an auto shop in Atlanta when we got back home called Fully FX did. But recently, and I really wish Darius was here because I love to brag on him so much about this part. MTV is kind of vilified in the film. They serve the role of the antagonist, but I don't know how to explain this, but it's kind of like, we don't necessarily say it, it's just the audiences say, oh, how'd you not do that? How'd you missed your opportunity, and they get it and they defend Darius. So it's kind of like neutral presentation, but the audience always ends up hating MTV. And 4 years later, our goal was to reach the 70 million viewers of MTV, all of them the age that lives and dies with this disease, all of them as idealistic as we were to even try this. And 4 years later, after making it, just 2 weeks ago, MTV got in touch with us, and I like to think that Darius stirred the pot enough and made enough trouble, and they've agreed to broadcast the movie probably in September. And so just like that's why I love to brag on him, the idea of this mega corporation bending to the will of Darius is like the coolest, most independent success story I can think of.
What were you doing when you were 11? climbing trees, going to summer camp, taking tennis lessons? How about traveling to your homeland for the first time since you were an infant to visit an orphanage in your birth city? That's what Anna Dodson, all of 11 years old, saw. That's when she saw an orphanage filled with girls with eyes like her own. This was her first experience with abject poverty. These girls were malnourished. Anna was stunned by what she saw, stunned and motivated into action. That's when she said, this could be me. I could be one of those girls. And then she added, and this is why she's here tonight, I want to do something right now to help these girls. Please join me in welcoming Anna Dodson to our panel this evening.
11-year-old Anna Dodson's trip with her parents to visit the ancient ruins of Machu Picchu included the usual trek through the most picturesque parts of Peru. But this was no ordinary vacation for Anna. She was returning to her homeland.
I was born in the hills of Cusco, Peru. My mom first got me when I was 4 weeks old.
It was in 2003 that Anna had traveled to Peru, far from her home in Colorado, a home where she had become a typical American girl, playing volleyball, rock climbing, and riding her horse. During their visit, the Dodson family did all the usual sightseeing, but there was one sight that Anna had to see.
I really wanted to go see an orphanage in Cusco.
The Dodsons made a stop at an orphanage in Anna's birth city. They were greeted with smiles and hugs from the children there, but as they toured the facility, Anna was shocked by the poverty and the living conditions. The bathroom was decayed, the kitchen dilapidated, and the girls were suffering from malnourishment. Yet Anna could not help but notice that the girls seemed joyful.
I felt this great pull toward these girls who had nothing, and I was like, wow, I could have been one of these kids.
Anna felt she had to act.
One girl, actually, Gloria, we got to be very good friends in the afternoon that I was staying there, and when I was leaving, she came up to me and she hugged me and she started crying. And she said, Anna, I know that you're never going to forget us, and I know that one day you're going to come back and help us. And I couldn't walk away from that.
When she returned home to Colorado, young Anna spread the word about the orphans' plight.
Well, I first asked my parents if I could, help these girls down there, and I really wanted to do something long-term.
At her bat mitzvah, Anna asked for vitamins for the girls instead of gifts for herself. She collected donations to her newly created charity, Peruvian Hearts. And on her next trip to Peru, Anna was armed with gifts.
When I went down there, I brought them teddy bears and books in Spanish because I love to read. And but then we started with vitamins, and we've given them clothing and hot water, clean water.
With Anna's hard work, her charity expanded, providing food and tutoring, even sending one of the girls to college, tuition fully paid by donations to Peruvian Hearts. The girls are now thriving.
We've done renovations, painted the orphanage, and there are 19 children right now. The change that I've seen in them is amazing. One girl said, "We are now getting fat because of the vitamins." This orphanage, it is to the point where these girls can dream.
Anna Dodson, one extraordinary young woman, inspired to lend a hand and to change lives.
When it got to the part of the video where it showed your bat mitzvah, and you were asking for vitamins for the girls, you could hear like this audible ripple throughout the audience, I suspect, of other people who did not. They probably raked in a lot of other kind of stuff at the same event. What were you thinking in asking for vitamins instead of gifts for yourself?
Well, I've grown up really witnessing my parents always giving to others who are less fortunate than ourselves. And so it really kind of only seemed natural that instead of getting gifts for my bat mitzvah, that I ask for vitamins for these girls that we had now been helping. And in 7th grade, actually, I did this project on malnutrition, and I realized that these kids really needed more than one good nutritious meal a day. In order to stave off malnutrition, they needed a multivitamin as well. And so that's really why I asked for vitamins, because man, you really can rake in a lot of stuff. And so I thought vitamins are the best thing to rake in.
So how did you were 11, how did you begin to really make your dream real? What do you think was at the core of that?
Well, in the beginning, when I was going to go to Peru on my homeland trip, the director of our trip asked us if we wanted to collect anything since we were going to go visit orphanages. And so I started this project called Book Buddy Bears, and I collected books and teddy bears so that I could take them down. I love to read. And since these kids didn't have parents to cuddle up with, I wanted to get them a teddy bear. And so I brought these books and teddy bears down to Peru, and I visited the orphanage in Cusco, but I really realized that these kids needed so much more than books and teddy bears. And I came back to the United States, and I couldn't stop thinking about these children. I would talk about them to my mom in the car on the way to school, and finally I asked my mom one day, I was like, so I kind of want to help these kids down in Peru, and what do you think? And my mom said, my mom is so supportive of me and of my culture, but she was a little hesitant when I asked her if I wanted to help these kids. And she said, well, what about a check? Can we send down a check? And I said, no, I really want to support these girls in a long-term relationship. And I had
You said that when you were 11?
Well, yeah, I mean, I had, and the reason why I said that was because I had grown up watching a friend of mine actually start her own nonprofit business.
At 11?
No, actually, she was 15 at the time. And I had watched this.
Where's Malcolm? We need this in Outliers.
I had watched this young woman, teenager, really help girls in Tanzania, and I'd watched her fundraising and all sorts of stuff, and I had grown up watching her, and so I knew that age doesn't matter if you want to help somebody or people down in Peru, as I wanted to help them. And that's really kind of what got me to realize that I could help these children.
This is great. So your dinner conversations at your house must have been kind of interesting.
Yes. Well, you know, we talk about all sorts of things. We talk about boys to school and to my test that day. But then again, there's the opposite side of Peruvian Hearts and what new projects we're starting and what color we want to paint the walls, or how are we going to transport the vitamins down. And my family is kind of interesting. They are so supportive of Peruvian Hearts, and just to give you a little idea of my family's role in Peruvian Hearts, my mom is the president of the board of directors of Peruvian Hearts, and she corresponds regularly with the nuns at the orphanage and with our contacts down in Peru. And my brother's the executive director of Peruvian Hearts, and I mean the kids absolutely love him.
Is he 4?
No. No, he's not. No, he's actually right over there. That's my family right there.
But you've done a lot more than vitamins. There's a library, medical and dental exams. You've made structural improvements, daily breakfast. How are you doing all this?
Really with the support of our friends and family of Peruvian Hearts, like here in Colorado and all over America. And they've just opened their hearts up to these children down in Peru. And we have, in addition to our friends in America, we have 2 people in specific down in Peru who we couldn't run Peruvian Hearts without their help, and Rosa and Edwin. They're absolutely amazing, and they make sure that all of the donations that we receive go directly to the orphanage and to the specific needs of the children. And so because of their willingness to help these children and the willingness of our friends, that's really how we've become so successful.
Well, how do you we had somebody here, one of the big people from Vogue was here. talking about how shopping is how young girls socialize. I mean, are you getting deprived of, there's a lot of sales in this recession. When do you have time to go shopping with your friends?
I'm not really big on shopping, but on the weekends, you know, it's a balancing act, and I need some time to myself, but I also really, I love the work that I do, and that's why I live.
And it sounds like you've had many role models, starting with this girl who was 15 and in your own household. Any other people like that we should know about who've affected you?
Yeah, Mother Teresa. She is my big role model, and I live by her words. She's an absolutely inspirational person, and of course my family as well are my role models to see how hard they work for these children.
And how do you obviously, watching you here, we can see that you're charismatic and all of that. What would you say is your, how do you manage to motivate others to come on board? You started with motivating your own mother. What would you say that is?
I think how I motivate others is really showing them that I followed my heart. And I know that sounds cheesy, but I really did follow my heart, and I tried to tell other people to find their passion in their life and to follow their heart as well, because I mean that's why we're all here. We all followed our hearts, and we've all come to our conclusion that we want to help others who are less fortunate than ourselves, and yeah, I guess following my heart that's how I won over my mom.
Thank you so much. When William Kamkwamba's family lacked $80 for annual school fees due to severe famine, he was forced to drop out of school in the 8th grade. In order to keep up with his school friends, William, an avid reader, relied on library books to continue his studies independently. Always interested in electronics, he found a British physics book in which he learned about electromagnetism. A second book, called Using Energy, featured a windmill on the cover. Given his interest in physics and the great need of his village for electricity, it seems inevitable that William, even at age 14, would build a windmill to power first his family home, then the village. No matter that there were no materials from which to build the windmill. Quite MacGyver-like materials for William's first windmill included a broken bicycle, tractor fan blade, old shock absorber, and blue gum trees. It powered 4 light bulbs and charged the neighbors' cell phones. That was just the beginning. In addition to his many accomplishments, he's already had a slot at the very coveted TED conference. Will you please help me welcome our next panelist, William Kamkwamba.
From a photograph in a textbook, William built a windmill. This is a story that should be shouted from the rooftops.
Hailing from a small village in the southern African country of Malawi, William Kamkwamba is one of 7 children. After 8th grade, William was forced to drop out of school when a severe famine struck Malawi in 1992. A famine that left many in the country, including William's family, without means to support themselves. Left without a choice, William decided to educate himself and to help his family.
We have enough wind in Malawi, and I was thinking, what can I do to use that wind so that we can have something? That's why I decided to read some books about the windmills. But they didn't say anything what you can do to build that windmill so that you can generate electricity or you can pump water.
William figured that part out on his own.
If this windmill is in this book, if I can try, maybe I can make mine so that I can have electricity in home.
He built a windmill to power his family's home so that they would not need to depend on kerosene. Using parts from an old bicycle, tractor, and a fan blade, William built his first prototype.
When the wind is blowing, we will be turning this, and here we'll connect a generator.
Not everyone was so sure about William's idea. But soon, people began to realize that maybe William was on to something. Word spread, and some local journalists came to see William's creation. What they saw was that a windmill was able to power light bulbs, car batteries, light switches, and even radio transmitters. Newspapers picked up the story, and soon after, William was invited to the United States.
Well, first off, when you see these enormous windmills, what are your first impressions?
This wind produces more than 600 megawatts, which can run the whole country in Malawi.
William finally re-enrolled in school as one of the first students at the African Leadership Academy, but the impact of his work remains back in his village in Malawi.
My parents, they are no longer now traveling long distance to fish water. They will be just getting water from this tap for sanitation, cooking, washing clothes, and bathing. I'm very happy to see my dream to become now reality. It just makes me happy all the time.
A young man with the simple goal of helping his family did so much more, inspiring others through his hard work, his clever innovation, and the courage of his imagination.
I have to say that because of my friend Tom Riley, 2 years ago, sitting in Pacifica Restaurant on his iPod, I think you were one of the first people to have an iPhone, I saw photographs of William's work, and I don't think there's a week that goes by that I don't think about him and what he has accomplished. It's absolutely extraordinary. And Brian Mueller is going to help us if I guess we need your help in terms of translation or something. So you come from a farming village. What do you grow, and how did the famine affect your family?
I come from the country where we depend on farming most of the time. We grow corn and tobacco. In 2002, it's when the big famine hit Malawi, and a lot of people, more than 10,000 people died of that famine, and my family was badly affected for that famine. Instead of the money which they were finding that time, to pay me a school fees, they were forced to buy food. We are eating normal food every day, lunch and dinner. And then after the famine, my dad decided to change it to 1 meal a day to make it the little food we had to sustain up to the next growing season. But it didn't sustain to the next season, and he tried several ways to make it happen so that we can survive.
What is the hungry season? Hungry season,
it's every year in Malawi, starting February up to the beginning of May, people running out of food because we depend on maize as our main food. And what happens is we harvest maize in May up next is harvesting it also next May. So there's no more way to another harvesting season. So in the way, in the February up to March to beginning of May, people running out of food. But this season, this hungry season, it's there's hungry, but the good thing is that there's government has organization which sells maize. It's it sells maize, but when in 2002, when the hunger hit Malawi, there was no food in the government's places where they sell food, because all surplus mills which we had, like the government was forced by IMF to sell it, because it was like difficult to keep the maize, and also they told them to pay some debts, but because of like some I think like corrupt leaders, instead of like using like wisely the money which they get from selling those maize, they just like spending in other things, and the country was affected.
Brian, you want to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to clarify that. Yeah, the hungry season.
Probably hold it to your mouth.
Yeah, the hungry season. Everybody in Malawi are sustenance farmers, and they live by their crops each year. And so, what he's saying is that they live by this one crop all year long, and so usually this runs out about in February. They don't harvest again until May. So there's this large gap that exists between that time that silos run dry, and it's during this time. It's also the rainy season in Malawi, and cholera is a problem as well, because the bodies are weak, and it's also a time when everybody's out trying to plant their next harvest, so they're working the hardest all year long with the least amount of food. And during that famine in 2002, everybody ran out of food, and there was no surplus to rely on, and so tens of thousands started to die. And on top of that, cholera swept through, and it was a pretty grim situation in Williams Village. And so it's...
Well, you're obviously an inventor. Tell us about your toy pinwheels.
My toy pinwheels, like when I was like growing up, when I was much younger, I used to play with pinwheels like all the time. Like it was like one of my toys which I used to play with. So I had like this idea of like seeing it when I'm pointing where wind is coming, it was rotating, and then afterwards, after the theme, when I was like going to the library to read books, it's when I get like some ideas about like bicycle dynamos. Bicycle dynamos are...
What is that?
Bicycle dynamos.
Bicycle dynamos.
Yeah, are like small generators which generate electricity on the bike to make like a headlamp of the bicycle when you are riding it. I had like an idea of those things, and later on when I saw the pictures of the windmill on the book, and then I connected together with the...
You mean when you saw the windmill on the cover of the Using Energy book?
Yeah, I connected the idea of the electromagnetic on the physics book of the physics book from the UK, which talks about the dynamos, and then I connected together with the picture of the windmill which I saw in the book, and also the small fan which I was making when I was young. After connecting those together, then I was like, I think maybe I can make something out of this thing. But before I decided to make a windmill to generate electricity, the main idea of the windmill, I was like planning to make a windmill maybe to pump water, because in the book they said that windmill are used to pump water and generate electricity. And I thought that if I can make one to pump water, then we're going to be growing like food like twice a year, and then my family maybe will no longer go like family again, like they handle, like we solve that problem.
You want to say something?
Yeah, just to brag on a bit. But in these books that he had, the first one was one called Explaining Physics, a British physics book. And William did not read English really at all. This book had incredible diagrams and illustrations, and it illustrated electromagnetism and circuits and switches and stuff like that. And just William basically memorized these diagrams and would see say it would be figure 10, for instance. And so he would look at the text and find where it said figure 10 in the text, and he would learn English around those sentences.
Incredible.
And basically taught himself electromagnetism in that way.
What were some of the materials you used, and what were some of the challenges that you faced?
Most of the material which I used, I get them from the junkyard. lucky enough at my former secondary school, before it was a secondary school, it was like, it used to be a grader for a certain tobacco estate. And then when they left it, they just left some parts of tractor, even like parts of water pump engines, motorbike, things like that. And then I went there to look for the materials. But the challenges was that it was next to my school, and some my friends, my classmates would be seeing me like wandering around at the junkyard, and then they would like pointing a finger at me like maybe I was like maybe smoking marijuana, and then I don't know what it is. I'm going crazy. Like even my parents, they didn't support the idea at the first time. They were like, I think your friends, they don't do like such things. Maybe there's something going on in your head.
And how did your windmill change life in the village?
The windmill has changed life of my village a lot. Even like I'll start with like my family. After I made that first windmill, I was able to power like light bulbs, and by then we are using, before the windmill, we were using kerosene lamp, which was causing many problems, like smoke from the kerosene lamp was causing like coughing, and also it was also like expensive for my parents to buy it all the time. And after the windmill, they were like, I was like able to use the windmill for the light bulbs and also for the radio. And later on, after some journalists came, and then I was like kind of like discovered, and people know me like here in the States. They came to help with like adding from the windmill, which I had like helping with solar panels to add on that, so that we can have like hybrid system. When there's no wind, then there's like sun and power is working. When there's no wind, then solar will be working. Things like that. And also they also helped with like funding, like drilling a borehole.
Funding like what?
Helping with like drilling a borehole.
Okay.
Yeah, a borehole which like we install a solar pump, solar water pump, which pumps water from the ground up to the tanks, which like is like helping people, like people are drinking water from the tap, like also people, like the same way people does in the urban areas. It's just like the same, they are drinking clean water. They are no longer like traveling long distances to fetch water.
And what's the green machine? In your mother's garden?
Yeah, green machine is like a new windmill which like I've just like made. It's like as I said in short, it's 2-in-1. There's like a place where I put like a generator to generate electricity. At the same time, it also like pumps water to power, like to irrigate my mom's garden. She does grow like a vegetable all year long. Like some of the vegetables we eat, and some of them we do like sell for the like to buy some other things. Yeah.
Incredible. And in addition to that, you go to school and you're an author. With Brian Mueller here, you have co-authored a book, The Boy Who Harnessed the Wind, which will be published in September. Sounds like Christmas presents for everybody. What inspired you to write a book for us? For the world, really. What's the message in your book?
I noticed that there's like a lot of like talented young people, even like or older people out there, but maybe because of like their like lack of encouragement, maybe if like they can hear like my story, I can share my story, then they can be also encouraged on whatever they are doing, maybe to come up with different ideas, then to change the world as well.
And who encouraged you?
I was like encouraged by my family and also other people to come up with the program.
Thank you so much, William. Palwasha Zarifi is from Kabul City, but lived with her family as refugees in Pakistan for 10 long years. As a teenager, she founded the Skills Training and Rehabilitation Society, STARS, in Pakistan, for which she now serves as managing director in Kabul City. This work takes her from the relatively safer home of Kabul City to the provinces at great personal risk. Palwasha not only returned home from exile, she's traveled many times to international conferences, always to tell the world about the plight of Afghan girls and women. In return, she says the conferences are providing new information and best practices that she can implement in her programs. She's been honored by UNICEF and the Afghan Ministry of Education for Girls' Education, among many other honors. She is our final guest tonight, who's traveled from Afghanistan, 25-hour travel schedule, to be with us tonight. Please welcome Palwasha.
Life under the fierce rule of the Taliban. In Afghanistan, religious police enforced what some call the strictest form of Sharia in the Muslim world. Under the Taliban's interpretation of Islamic law, women were required to wear head-to-toe burqas, and girls were prevented from going to school. The consequences for even the smallest violation were severe. Even after the fall of the Taliban in 2001, life in Afghanistan continued to be difficult. But there are some small rays of hope. The Skills Training and Rehabilitation Society, or STARS, has been working to help local communities improve the lives of its people, teaching skills such as carpet weaving and livestock development. STARS is also empowering women and girls through education. The founder of STARS, 26-year-old Palwasha Zarifi, has been fighting to help the Afghan people since she was in her teens.
I was born in Kabul city in center of Afghanistan. So when I was just a small child, for about 10 years we were refugees in Pakistan because of that fighting and war situation in Afghanistan. It was hard. For 10 years we were living in one room with one kitchen and bathroom.
Because of their refugee status, Palwasha's parents had difficulty finding work to support their family.
My father was jobless on that time because it was hard for Afghans to get a good job.
After hard years living as refugees, Palwasha's family made the decision to return home to Afghanistan, but the return was bittersweet.
Before coming to Afghanistan, I was really nervous because I was here and I have seen with my eyes that how the rockets, the bomb blast, the explosions.
Palwasha took the hardship of her experience and used it for inspiration. At age 16, she joined the Afghan Women's Network, and by 18 was working with the United Nations Assistance Mission in Afghanistan. By age 20, Palwasha founded the STARS program. Its mission, supporting the vulnerable groups of Afghan society, with a focus on lifting women out of their victimized status. Today, STARS operates in 9 Afghan provinces, and Palwasha has taken her message of empowerment to the international stage. In 2007, she was selected as a young champion for girls' education by UNICEF. And she has achieved all this while continuing her own education at Kateb University, where she is a first-year political science student. Palwasha Zarifi, one young woman making a difference.
Are you rested? 25 hours. We complain about delays in Denver. Tell us a little bit about your life as a refugee with your family in Pakistan.
Well, since I was born, I have just seen war, fighting, miserable life. And because of the brutal situation, I lost my aunt, my cousin, and like me, many other Afghan girls has lost most of their family members. And especially because of the merciless situation for Afghan women. So the life was getting so miserable, and we had to get refugee to Pakistan. Life in Pakistan was not so good, as we were economically so poor, and my father had a good position and job while we were in Afghanistan, as he was as an architect in the construction department of Ministry of Defense, and my mother was the deputy principal in one of the high schools. So when we refugeed to Pakistan, my father was jobless. My mother was working as part-time, teaching in one of the schools. And as an elder girl of the family, I was the one to help my family by knitting beads, sewing, making handicrafts and selling outside, and also teaching the children of our neighbors. So this was the life we had in Pakistan, and 10 years passed with such a time.
Talk to us more about STARS, which we're just beginning to hear a little bit about, your work with job training widows and children.
Well, with a group of women which I was working with called Afghan Women Network, we found the STARS, the Skills Training and Rehabilitation Society, in 1997 in Peshawar city of Pakistan. And we started to help the needy refugees there. And in 2002, we decided to shift the office to Kabul, and we legally registered the organization with the government of Afghanistan. And when I have realized that I can better help my people, particularly women, through STARS, so I got the whole responsibility of the management, and while now I'm the managing director for STARS. So in that way, we have expanded our activities in 9 provinces of the country in the sectors of livestock, education, health, skills development, disaster management, with the financial help of some of the international aid workers in Afghanistan, like USAID, IRC, UNFM, Norwegian Church Aids, and so on. Our mission is to support the vulnerable groups of the society, particularly women, to become self-reliant through skills development and income-generating activities.
And do you see the impact of it?
Of course. I saw and I have realized the good and the great result of my humanitarian work, which enhanced and is enhancing my maturity and knowledge on the communities and on the management that I do.
Why is your work so risky? And what are some of the risks? Personal risks.
I think, yes, I think it's natural issues in the insecure countries like Afghanistan, where women and children are the front vulnerable groups. And the enemies of Afghanistan people, they are always trying to target the educated people first. And that's why they know that if everyone will be educated, so they will not have a chance to misuse Islam among the people. And my job and my team responsibility is to educate people. So that's why my work is so risky.
But what are the personal risks to you?
Of course, these are the personal risks that while I'm traveling to the provinces, I cannot travel alone, or whether if I'll go alone. Just last week, I have heard one of my friends, which from my team, she also had her own organization. She was head of the organization. She was killed in Mazar-e-Sharif province. So it is a risk. And when we want to educate people, when I want to give awareness on the right of women, I want to economically empower them. So it is a risk.
Who are the women that you serve? What are their lives like?
Mostly we are focusing the targeted groups like IDPs, internet displaced people, refugees, widows, women-headed families, poor families. These are mostly the targeted people we are focusing on.
And like the other young people on this panel, this became important to you at a very young age. What do you think? Why do you think that is?
The hard life of Pakistan, really as a refugee, it gave me a lesson to serve my sister, the needy sisters in Afghanistan and in Pakistan. I was the eyewitness of seeing my other sisters in my age, that how hardly they were working and they were supporting their families. And of course, I was lucky in this case that at least I got the chance to continue my education there in Pakistan. But there were lots of other girls who could not, afford. Economically, they were much more poor, that they could not afford the fees or admission of their schools, and they were just helping their families. So as a member of the society, I was feeling responsible to help these women, give them awareness on their right, economically empower them so that they take a part in political decision makings and won't be the victims in the future in France.
Well, like Anna has role models. Did you have any role models?
What you mean by that?
Do you know what I mean by that? It's an expression probably from America. It's in English. It's in English. It means people who you look up to, who give you ideas and inspire you.
Well, of course, as I said earlier, with the groups of women which I was working as a volunteer youth with them, I have got lots of experiences from them. And of course, my parents were the first, who wanted to give me, the hope, and they were supporting me to struggle against hopeless.
Are there any other things that you want us to know about the lives of women in Afghanistan?
Well, there are some hidden capacities within the Afghan women, and that needs to be built. Some hidden capacities within the Afghan women, and that needs to be built up. And of course, we will be success. There is a hope for the future that it will be, but it needs time. And of course, especially in the southern parts of the country, there are lots of women who are unaware of their rights. They are not allowed to go and work outside. And it's a big challenge for us that we have to think about it.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
I have to say, I thought the class last year was pretty amazing, and it just gets stronger and stronger. It's incredible for those of you who have been friends of the Global Nomads already. Could we have the lights up and ask a few questions of these remarkable, remarkable young people? Could we put some lights up in the audience? No questions?
Sure.
Hard to believe.
I got a question.
Yes, it's hard to see.
I have a question about Darius. I have a child with juvenile diabetes, and so we always talk about a cure, but in the meantime we hope for better therapeutics and better quality of life. And I wonder, in the case of Duchenne, obviously the outlook prognosis isn't great in terms of a cure, or perhaps you could enlighten us a little bit about how much progress is being made, not just to find a cure, but as well to extend Darius's life and improve his quality of life, so that the research is focused obviously long-term on a cure, but is there any progress in terms of enhancing his quality of life on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, so absolutely. His quality of life has increased dramatically ever since taking the trip, but I don't want to paint a picture where he didn't have a happy life before it. Sometimes it becomes this exotic, like Darius leaving home thing. He has a very loving mother, and he had a very loving brother, and he has a sister as well. So he had a high quality of life. It just wasn't very diverse. He never left Athens. And so now he's circled the United States. He's been to the Caribbean. He's been to Canada. And he's gotten a wheelchair accessible house. The supporters came together one year, got him a wheelchair accessible house. So his quality of life is very high, and he's learned a lot on his travels. But to get back to the cure versus, not versus, but cure and quality of life dynamics, if you see our film, we're not filling a niche because there's already people advocating for a cure, but probably most people are familiar with the Muscular Dystrophy Association, and that's the biggest organization that helps muscular dystrophy. And they mainly focus on quality of life services for the 9 types of muscular dystrophy, as well as some other neuromuscular diseases. And it was actually Darius's wish to only fund research. It was his decision, and it was based on the idea. You caught a bit of it, but Mario, his brother, kind of asked me. I've known Darius since he was 5 years old, and Mario kind of asked me to look out for Darius. Did I know it was going to turn into a 7,000-mile road trip and a documentary? No way. But that's how we began to get very close. And Darius, in the film, there's another young man who's 5 years old who has Duchenne muscular dystrophy. And Darius, in the film, is essentially kind of symbolically asking everyone who witnesses his story to watch out for Charlie, who's the young man, who also is the namesake of an organization that funds research. And the timing is right. All the scientists are in agreement that Charlie's life can be saved. And that's what Darius cares about, and that generation. So
Doesn't a doctor in the film, though, talk about the sort of identification of a certain gene or something like that?
Well, I'm not sure of the anatomy of diabetes that you mentioned. Didn't you say diabetes? But Duchenne muscular dystrophy is a monogenetic disease, which I think that's what you're talking about. So it's very simple. If you just imagine a bullseye, or a dartboard, there's only one target. So all the scientists have the same target that they're aiming at, and they're coming up with different darts. So it's a very rapid progressing field once it's funded. And also all of the developments in science, all the wonderful stuff going on right now is right on target, to continue with the analogy. So another child in the film is taking a pill, and his life will be extended because of it. He's in a human clinical trial right now.
I think we have time for just a couple more questions, and I know at the conclusion many of you will come up to the stage to have some one-on-one time with some of these young people. Yes?
These are amazing stories. These are incredible stories, and what you've done is absolutely amazing. I was wondering if each of you could share any lessons for those in the group who are parents. I mean, what you've done are completely to your credit, but are there any lessons for those who have children in terms of enabling them toward achieving their potentials?
I'll go first. Well, I really talked about how my parents always showed me and my brothers to give themselves to others. And I think by you being the example of reaching your hand out to other people and supporting those who are less fortunate than you, I think you can make a huge impact on your child. It's so important to show your children that you care about others. And I mean, obviously all of our parents have really supported us and to where and that's why we're here today. It's because our parents have really supported us and encouraged us, and all of you guys have too. So if you just keep on telling your child to follow their heart and really tell them to reach out their hand, I think, and by you being the example, I think that's a great way to start.
Sounds clear to me. Paul Washer, do you want to say anything about that?
Oh, well, as my friend said, that really, I mean, I am also one of the examples, as really my family has been one of the big supporter of me on that time. I mean, they are the one who really supported me to fight against the hopeless and taught me how to go ahead and work for the people and how they have encouraged me. So really, it's a good way, I mean, to encourage the children and give them the chance, as they have their own ideas, but sometimes, I mean, especially in our countries, in Islamic countries, mostly, I mean, people do not give chance to the children and say, oh, this child, just what he says, that it's not, I mean, much more important. But that idea can work. That can bring a change for the society. So
maybe we'll take one last question. Yes?
A question for Awasha. Do you find that you get support from the men in Afghanistan? And if so, is that support increasing as time goes on?
Well, yes. I mean, the way we want to support the women is that directly we cannot go in our society, directly we cannot go to the family or to the, to that community or village and say that we want to raise awareness on women's rights, and we want to empower or give the decision-making responsibility to your wife. So the way we give awareness, I mean, we want to economically empower them and give them some skills training, and we convince the male members that we're gonna support your family, not only your the female, but as she will be mostly working at home and will be responsible for the livestock activities or some skills works like carpet weaving and so on. So we indirectly involve the male members as well, that as your wife will work on the skills, so you are the one to sell it outside, take it outside. So that's why, I mean, indirectly we do this.
Ooh. Well, thank you so much to the Bezos family. Thank you so much for Global Nomads and the people who organize these young people. Thank you so much, Global Nomads. And thank you to these young people who've been with us.